Well, it's Monday, and it is tax day. Yes, good morning as we start the week here on KCMO. Man, oh, man, oh, man. Did you file those taxes yet, Mark? You all set there, big guy?
Yeah, I started in February and finished it yesterday.
Oh, man, that's how it goes, right? You get those taxes going in February. I'm going to get them done early this year. Tell me you're not getting some huge refund. Are you getting a big refund, or are you kind of just breaking even?
$33.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
almost
outstanding.
Perfect. Yeah.
See, that's how you want it to go. That's exactly how you want your taxes to go. Don't be celebrating if you get a big refund. All right? Now, you're probably thinking, why wouldn't I want thousands of dollars back? Because what that means is the government just borrowed your money interest-free. Instead of you having several $1,000s to do with as you please, spend, invest, whatever it might be, you just lent it to the government. And by the way, that dollar is worth less than it was 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So your money is worth less than it was a year ago, in part thanks to the absolute clown show that is in charge of things right now. And, it's less valuable, and you just let them borrow it. So do not be celebrating. I'm getting more of a refund than I care to share. I'm disappointed in myself for giving the feds more money than I should have last year. So please make sure, if you're getting that big refund, take your money and try to do better next year.
I would have actually probably owed, but we had a new baby, so that kind of straightened it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I might need to look to tweak something next year. But
hey, man,
we'll see.
You get $33, that's the way to go. Mark's doing the right thing. I'm not doing the right thing. I failed miserably this year as I went through my taxes. But maybe next year will be better since we had our baby this year. So you look at tax day, and, of course, April 15th, that's the day every single year. And there's been a lot of conversation online over the weekend as to who owes how much, how much should we really be giving the government. This is always a chance for Bernie Sanders and many of his ilk to talk about paying your fair share. That's what they do this time of year. That's how it always goes, right? So this went viral over the weekend. Mark Cuban, you may remember him or know him. Shark Tank, owner of the Mavericks, became a billionaire during the .com.
Dallas Mavericks, I'll say, since we have a hockey team of the same name.
Yes, he does
Most
not.
people would know.
Yes, he owned the Dallas Mavericks of the NBA. He put up a couple of tweets over the weekend that went viral when it came to tax day coming up today. And he was going all in on, how he got a big tax cut and I'm a really rich guy and I don't need a tax cut and the whole thing. And it didn't go well for him. So here was the tweet from Mark Cuban that's gotten 16 million views. He writes here in response to somebody who asked if he pays more than required on taxes in order to pay your quote-unquote fair share. Mark Cuban writes, I pay what I owe. Tomorrow, I will wire transfer to the IRS $288 million. He says, this country has done so much for me. I'm proud to pay my taxes every single year. Tag a former president that doesn't. Wow. Wow, Mark, that's unbelievable. You're going to write a check to $288 million to the feds and brag about it. To which I say, one, he never actually answered the question. Mark didn't say that he paid more than required, so he's just flexing. He's not admitting to giving the government more than he should. He's just saying, I'm paying what I'm legally obligated to pay. Well, that's what we all do, right? If not, we get in some trouble.
Mighty generous of you.
Yeah. Congratulations there, Mark. You're paying what you owe, big guy. Wow.
Such a nice man.
And then the other part of it is, imagine thinking giving this federal government $288 million is something to brag about. I would call this the ultimate cuck move. Bragging about giving almost $300 million to the worthless federal government here in this United States. I mean, I understand we all have to do it. I don't like it. You don't like it. We understand our money is being wasted left and right on absolute and utter nonsense. But to brag about it? Yeah, look at me, man. $300 million I'm giving to the feds. Geez, imagine how much good Mark Cuban, if he wanted to, could do with that. For charitable donations, I don't know if he's a man of faith, to his church, to whatever his house of worship is. I would trust Mark Cuban to drive around the streets of Dallas or come up here to Kansas City and literally just hand out $100 bills to people. That would be a more effective use of his $288 million than whatever the federal government is doing with it. So this is not the, wow, look at me approach that he thought he was going for here. He got absolutely smoked on this thing, and he should have. He absolutely should have. Wow. But, a lot of lefties got into his mentions. Oh, Mark, thank you for your honesty and hard work. Transparency is a virtue. Oh, yes. So what? People can live off the dole? I mean, if that's what Mark Cuban wants more of, fine. But he should probably just start his own homeless shelter or something, or, come up here. We've got some great shelters he could give to where people are trying to get a hand up, not a hand out. At places like City Union Mission here in Kansas City, outstanding operations like that. Trust me, we will do a better job with it in the private sector than the government will. We are $35 trillion in debt as we sit here on tax day. I mean, just put that into perspective. We are well on our way to $50 trillion in debt when you look at these numbers. And it's going to be here before we know it, based on how much debt we're adding every single year in the United States. It's completely out of control. I mean, we're sitting here at $35 trillion when only 10 years ago we were less than half of that. We were at about $16 trillion in debt. We have more than doubled it in the last decade. We are spending our way into poverty. We are spending our way into an environment that is unsustainable. 25 years ago, we were sitting right at about $5 trillion in debt, give or take. $5 trillion. Wasn't good, but it certainly was not where we ended up today and where we are today, and that is 7x, essentially, where we were just 25 years ago. Our government is making us poorer, and you're seeing that over the weekend. I don't know if you saw this, but McDonald's prices have doubled since 2014 on average, while the official inflation data shows just 31% inflation. But McDonald's prices are 2x what they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the McChicken was $1. It's now $2.99. That's a 199% increase. The McDouble was $1.19. It's now $3.19. Medium fries were $1.59. They are now $3.79. I told you guys that when we, I don't eat a lot of McDonald's. We got it after we had Charlotte a few weeks ago. There was that McDonald's across from Advent Health up here in Overland Park. And I'm looking at the prices, and I'm like, $3.79 for a medium fry? And then they were cold on top of that. They weren't even any good. So when the government's sitting there and talking about, 30% inflation the last 10 years, or 3.5 or 3.8% was the latest number, I'm having a hard time believing it. When I see McDonald's prices on average more than doubling over the last 10 years. It's unbelievable. And in case you're wondering, John, your favorite, the filet of fish, has gone from $3.49 to $5.49. That's a 57.
Preaching to the choir, bro.
Yeah, I know. Preaching to the choir. $3.49 to $5.49 over the last 10 years. 57% hike. 913-408-7957. It's tax day. If you want to, frankly, probably should make it a tirade Monday with it being tax day. But, tomorrow's tirade Tuesday at 8:30 on KCMO. We'll get you caught up, too, on what happened in the Middle East over the weekend. You probably saw the headlines with Iran launching drones and missiles at Israel. What exactly took place? What was the purpose of it? We'll get to that coming up here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Wasn't looking good on Saturday night. Iran ended up firing 170 kamikaze drones, 120 ballistic rockets, and 30 cruise missiles at Israel. Now, it's amazing when you think to this and you realize that, expectations were this was going to be much more deadly, thank goodness, than it ended up being. But because of Israel's incredible defense, along with the help of the United States and others, damage was light. And the only reported casualty was a single 7-year-old girl, which is tragic. But when news first broke on Saturday afternoon that Israel was under attack from Iran, let's be honest, we all expected this to be significantly worse. Now, why did Iran launch this attack on Israel? Because they view Israel as vulnerable. I think that's incredibly obvious right now. We know what Israel is having to deal with Hamas along the Gaza Strip. And Iran also views America as weak. That's indisputable right now. They see a president who is trying to ride the fence of protecting a longstanding ally in Israel while also appealing to his most progressive base in the Democratic Party that wants no part of protecting Israel. And Iran, flush with cash, by the way, I will add, thanks to our unfreezing of assets in part, is sitting there and saying, well, why not now? Why not give it a shot? That's what happened on Saturday. It was the first time that Israel has been attacked by a sovereign state since Saddam Hussein's Iraq launched missiles in the first Gulf War in 1991. It's been 33 years since Israel dealt with something like this. And they handled it as well as you could have hoped they would have handled it. So now what happens? Well, Joe Biden, according to reports, told Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that the U.S. will not support any counterattack against Iran. Biden apparently spoke with Netanyahu in a late-night phone call after Iran bombarded Israel with hundreds of missiles and drones on Saturday in response to a drone strike in Syria that killed 12 Iranians. And Biden made it clear per Axios to Netanyahu that U.S. forces would not participate in any further operations. Netanyahu, of course, saying that he understood. He's got to play nice with Joe Biden. There's no doubt that Netanyahu is not a fan of Joe Biden, and nor should he be. However, he understands he's got to play nice as best as he can. Now, U.S. forces, of course, helped Israel intercept some of these drones and missiles and whatnot from Saturday. But Joe Biden is trying to de-escalate this thing as best as he can. And you understand it until you realize that Joe Biden's approach to the entire region has led us to this point in time. And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least play this clip from 4 years ago, when Joe Biden, speaking in 2020, was concerned that Donald Trump's approach to the Middle East was going to get us into a war with Iran.
The world has changed because of what Trump has done. And the American people, including independents and some Republicans, know how bad he is, know how much he's misrepresented, know how he's getting close to getting us in a war. I said, as the walls close in on this man, I'm worried he's going to get us to war in Iran. Unfortunately, I may have been right. The fact of the matter is there's a lot at stake in this election.
The walls are closing in. Haven't heard that one in a hot minute, right?
How old was that clip?
4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Sounds like a different guy, doesn't he?
Almost like Hunter. You
Yeah.
know? It's amazing how they have similar things. But the more I hear Hunter and then compared to that,
yeah,
I was like, wow.
And compared to today.
Yeah, 4 years. Wow.
That has been a long 4 years mentally for Joe Biden. I don't say that with joy. I'm just like, I heard that clip too, and I'm like, that sounds like a different guy.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the same guy we've got in the White House today. I mean, not that he was ever all that well-spoken, but, man, he's at least coherent there. He's got pacing to his cadence. That is not the man that is in the Oval Office today.
Yeah, sort of like at least a passion for what he was saying. So
yeah,
there was a rhythm to it and all.
Exactly.
Delivery.
It's all gone. So you hear what Joe Biden said. That was 40 years ago after Trump killed Soleimani. Remember that targeted attack? It was January of 2020 that he took out Soleimani. And Joe Biden, at the time, is saying, boy, we're going to get into a war with Iran because we're killing their bad guys. Actually, we're flexing on them. We're showing them who's boss. We're saying if we get certain intelligence that suggests your top guys are set to do bad things, to break it down as simplistically as possible. We're taking care of business. We're not going to war. We're doing targeted attacks against your leadership to send a message. And we're taking them out if we know that we can do it effectively and relatively safely. That's what we did. That's called being the leader on the world stage. It's not going to war with everybody. It's not spending billions of dollars that we don't have inefficiently. No. That's not what this is about. It's about being a leader. It's about showing, don't screw with us. And that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly what this country has done when it's been most effective on the world stage. It's not being reactive. It's being proactive. And every step of the way, this administration has been reactive. They were reactive in a colossally embarrassing way in Afghanistan with that withdrawal. They've been, generally speaking, reactive with Russia and Ukraine, and not in any way really understanding what's going on the ground there. And they've been reactive in the Middle East. And we've been riding this fence to the point where we just can't come out and say, listen, these are our allies. These are the people that we're getting behind. And not that anybody wants full-scale war. No one wants World War III. But it sure does feel like we're a lot closer to it today than we were 4 years ago. Because the worst actors on the planet sense and smell weakness. Putin smelled it. Hamas smells it. The Iranians are smelling it too. Just like Joe Biden, when he's sniffing kids at the podium, they are smelling it. And that's what we've got going on right now on the world stage. So we've got to be pulling and backing our folks and our friends in Israel right now. And by the way, they should be doing some kind of counterattack. You cannot have 300 missiles fired at you by the Iranians and say, boy, we intercepted them, so we should be good. Hope it doesn't happen again. I know they've got a lot on their plate right now with Hamas. But, man, that's where we've got to step in and say these are our allies. Not that we're sending men and women in some full-scale operation, but we've got to make it clear to the world and to these scumbags that we've got their backs. Well, that GoFundMe, by the way, for KCPD Officer Reed Nelson, we've got it on the KCMO pages, Twitter, and Facebook. I will put it up on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram here momentarily as well on my personal accounts. You can see it in all those different places. A single father shot in the elbow last week during a routine traffic stop. He's got several months to recover. Thank goodness he's alive. And 3 young boys to care for at home as a single parent is going to be a lot for him right now. So please do consider that donation. They're trying to raise $10,000 through this GoFundMe. And right now it's at about $5,300. So I see some of those donations coming in. Just something to consider here. Pick me up on a Monday morning. It's not all, and it shouldn't always be, as some want to turn it into, doom and gloom. This community takes care of its own. I know you guys do that, and we want to share that with you here on 95.7 FM. Now, in Jackson County, I saw this from Tony's Kansas City over the weekend. Headline, Kansas City business community to unite against Jackson County Executive Frank White. To which I respond, that would have been a great idea 18 months ago when the guy was on the ballot. You know, I mean, I have no sympathy for these business leaders who, when I talk to them and call them and, you know, there's races like Jackson County Executive and it's Frank White, it's Teresa Galvin, and we're wondering what the best direction is for the county. They either, 1, don't care. They, 2, accept the status quo. 3, they don't want to get involved because they don't want to, you know, stick their neck out there and they got to play nice with everybody. And they're, frankly, cowardly in many cases. But now something happened that impacts them. But now, you know, it comes down to the stadiums and they're all bent out of shape. And they're all upset about how the stadium process went because there was a lot of money for a lot of people to be made in the stadium deal. Now, I'm not convinced that Frank White not being in the executive's office would have dramatically changed the outcome 2 weeks ago now, but it might have. If you didn't have Frank White in there, if it was being handled by somebody who was a little more competent, if you didn't have the property tax or tax assessment fiasco of the last several months, it might not have been a 16-point blowout. But this is why elections, and most notably local elections, matter. So I'm not shedding a single tear for the business community that realizes that Frank White is not a competent county executive. I have no sympathy whatsoever because I was saying that 2 years ago. And when I would talk to these people, they'd say, we're not going to get involved. Frank's still Frank, Royals legend. I mean, he's probably the favorite. It's Jackson County. He's the Democrat at the top of the ticket. We're going to stay out of it. Okay, fine. But then when you get screwed, you don't get to sit there and say, gosh, this guy really isn't all that good at his job. Yeah, I know. We told you that 2 years ago. Here's the report from Tony's Kansas City. Tony writes here, Kansas City business leaders are united in opposition against Frank White and are now working to actively seek his removal after stadium tax defeat. An insider tells Tony's Kansas City, think about it this way. The Jackson County executive just took money out of the pockets of some of the most powerful people in Kansas City. We're talking millions of dollars and a construction project that would have been bigger than the airport. They're not going to just let that slide or forget about it. Now, Frank says he's going to run again. There are doubts that his career will carry him that far. The decision has been made. The overwhelming majority of the business community now sees Jackson County Executive Frank White as the biggest local impediment to progress. Man, I know we can't reach everybody here in this community. Some days I wish we could. And trust me, there's plenty of things that I get wrong. So once in a while when I'm right, I like to at least, share that with you, John, because trust, I'm wrong a lot. I'll be the first guy to tell you, and you'll remind me on the text line and on the phones. I'm wrong a lot. But once in a while when we're right, we got to at least reshare that with you. Where were you in 22, John? I know we didn't have this big 95.7 FM stick, but we were still here every day, 4 hours doing this on 7:10 a.m.
Right. In 7 years, we certainly could have saved people at least 2 years worth of time.
Yeah. At the very least, we could have done that. So instead, it's like all these guys and gals and folks across the business community are waking up to some of the incompetencies in the Jackson County Executive's office. And it's not just there, by the way. It's also in the county legislature. These business folks don't care about these races. They don't think it impacts them. They just assume that they'll get done what they want to get done. Democrat, Republican, they're mostly apolitical people. Like, they probably lean right of center at their core, but they don't really care who's in office. They don't care if it's Democrats or Republicans. They just figure they'll get done what they want to get done. They're big business folks, and they'll get their way. And now they haven't, and they're shocked, and they don't know what to do about it. And now they're like, wow, we've got some bad people in office. Oh, geez, you don't say.
Talk about a bombshell.
It used to be some of these business people were in the legislature.
Well, that's true, too.
And now, I don't know if you're not paying attention or thinking, somebody else has got this. I'm doing my thing.
Well, it used to be, you'd have a successful private sector career, and then you'd, give back, right? Yeah. You might run for county legislature or something like that. But now, especially in the more progressive movements, government is a career for these people. This is all they do. This is what they know. And they crave power for their movement.
Yeah.
It's not the old school, Dems. It's just not that way anymore in Jackson County. And these people are learning that the hard way. And shame on them because we told you it was coming here on KCMO 95.7 FM. Meantime, one local media, I thought tried to do a gotcha with our buddy Mark Alford, and it didn't go the way they hoped it would. I'll explain that next on KCMO. Well, no one knows the local media scene in this town like Mark Alford, right? Missouri Congressman, 4th District. I didn't see Mark on Saturday when I was at the Jackson County GOP Lincoln Days event. He had to video in a great 5-minute message. Of course, he was fresh off his trip to Israel here in the last couple of weeks, so he couldn't make it. But, he's a friend of the show. He does his weekend show here on KCMO, Mark Alford's America, that airs on Saturday afternoons and then again on Sunday mornings. So he's a staple here. He knows this town as well as anybody, and now he's representing the good people in the 4th Congressional District in Missouri in Congress. Well, I saw this over the weekend. Woke 41's morning guy wanted to do a gotcha with Mark Alford. Now, I wouldn't have seen this unless the individuals involved tried to share it and get it to go viral on social media. They didn't get it to go viral on social media, but clearly, when a news anchor here in Kansas City or anywhere for that matter is sharing a back and forth with a political figure, and you know what angle they're coming at it from, they're only sharing it because they think they got him. They believe they got the politician in question. They believe they tricked them into either a non-answer or answering the question in kind of a stumbly, mumbly way. And that's the only reason I believe this anchor on Woke 41 Action News shared this clip. So let's roll the tape. This is Taylor Hemness with Mark Alford, and it was on the issue of DEI and CRT. That's, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and critical race theory. Let's roll the tape here on KCMO.
Quite frankly, you represent a district that probably isn't the most diverse. It's a lot of people who come from very similar backgrounds, and one district over that includes Kansas City, that's not necessarily the case. And I've seen some of the responses and pushback, and obviously social media is not an appropriate barometer for the exact feeling of things, but it caught my attention enough that you would single out, or not single out, but reference diversity as something that is not necessarily a strength of this country, and I wanted to ask you about.
Stop right there. The question is to Mark Alford from Taylor Hemness of Woke 41. You mentioned diversity not being a strength of this country. What Mark tweeted here that had the Woke 41 anchor all bent out of shape is that DEI has no place in our schools, no place in our military, and I can assure you, no place in the federal government. Mark says here, I'll do everything I can to oppose this legislation. America's strength lies in our commonality, not diversity. That is the tweet from Mark Alford. Well, DEI is not about diversity. It's not. It's about groupthink. It's Orwellian in nature at its very core. If you oppose DEI, you need to be properly programmed. That's the whole point of it. There's nothing about it that is free speech. There's nothing about it that is about our commonalities. It's how we're different, and our differences require certain groups to do certain things. And if you don't do those said things, you need to be properly reprogrammed. That's what it is. It's a useless scam that is making a lot of individuals very wealthy. So anyway, the question is unfairly set up, but that's to be expected when you're talking about Woke 41. Let's roll the answer from Congressman Alford.
Well, look, I think anything that is, I think these programs, my point with this legislation is these programs have hurt our nation. Sure, it's good to be aware of our differences, but let's not dwell on the differences. Let's dwell on what unites us as a people. We live in the greatest nation known to man. And if we're not all doing our part in whatever job we have or whatever community we're a part of, then we need to take a good look at what our goals and values are as a nation. And I just want us to come together, whatever our differences are, and to concentrate on what we have in common.
Okay. I mean, I see no problem with that answer from Mark Alford, but clearly, if the Woke 41 anchor is sharing that little back and forth, he thinks he got him. I don't think he did, but there was a little bit of a pause there from the congressman, which maybe makes the anchor think, got him. Got him. He didn't know. I got him. He's paused. What I think is important to note about the failures of DEI and CRT, and I think Mark alluded to this in his answer a little bit, is that we have much more in common than we don't. We do. You know, I was at the event on Saturday night, and there's white folks, there's black folks, there's people from the urban core of Kansas City, there's people from rural Jackson County, and one commonality is not just obviously the mindset and the way people maybe view Kansas City, view Jackson County, and view the country, but it's like, okay, we look different, but we have the same beliefs and we have the same goals. And I firmly believe that across the country. DEI inherently is meant to make us look at our differences instead of making us look at what we have in common. DEI programs inherently are intended to make us look at each other as what we are on the outside instead of exploring all the commonalities we have together on the inside. That's why the program is an utter sham. And it has been a scam. And it's made a lot of people a lot of money in higher education and in corporate America. But there's nothing to suggest it's doing anything to unite us. In fact, it does a lot more to divide us than it does to unite us. And DEI backers always claim that they're the champions of free speech. They do it all the time. Yet it's overwhelmingly evident that the opposite is true. DEI enforces nothing but far-left narratives while punishing those who deviate away from them. That's the purpose of the program. It undermines the purpose of higher education and the whole thought of in corporate America working together, finding those commonalities. Instead, it's, boy, you're black, he's white, she's Latino, he's Asian, and boy, you're all so different. We need to make sure you know how to treat each other. Oh, you mean like what we learned in first grade? Treat others how you wish to be treated? It's not about what you look like. It's about being a decent person. I should put together a 5-minute DEI training program and try to fleece every corporation I can by putting one together as well, because that's all it is. It's a screw job. It's a way to make a buck. And it's a way to make a buck off the narrative that America is still, in 2024, inherently racist, hasn't come along in any way, shape, or form, and people need to be properly programmed under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It sounds so good. It's brilliantly titled, by the way. I'll give them that. It is brilliantly titled. But there's nothing about it that is accurate in the way it's depicted. And for the anchor to also say to Mark Alford there, roll the question. Do you have that, Mark, one more time? Just roll the question there from the Woke 41 anchor to Mark Alford. One more time, please. Oh, all right. 1 second. You're going to pull that up for me. I just want to make sure that we hear the question again, because I think the question is important in the way that it's framed.
You might set up a program to counter-program DEI and be successful, because that'll be the next step to wash this all out. So we'll need a program for that.
I'll take the program to deprogram you from the program. All right, here we go.
Quite frankly, you represent a district that probably isn't the most diverse. It's a lot of people who come from very similar backgrounds.
All right, stop right there. Basically, he says, boy, you got a bunch of white rural people in your district. Would anyone ever say that to somebody in a more urban district? Oh, there's no diversity in your district, is there? No, of course not. That right there, right out of the gates in the questioning from Woke 41 tells you all you need to know about the angle that the anchor is going for. That's it right there. And that is something that only in a district that looks like Mark Alford's would somebody say that. You would never say that to somebody in a majority black, Latino, or Asian district. But in a majority white district, boy, yeah, you don't really have any diversity anyway in your district. Push a bunch of white people.
Would they say that about Cleaver?
No, of course not. No way.
No.
Nope. 822, we have, I just mentioned this an hour ago. Real quick, the GoFundMe that's out there for Reed Nelson, KCMO police officer who was shot in the elbow last week during a routine traffic stop. It's going to take him up to a year to recover. He's a single father of 3 young boys. His GoFundMe is up on the KCMO Talk Radio, Twitter, and Facebook pages. I also put it on my personal Twitter and Facebook at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. I'm going to pop it on Instagram as well, at Pete Mundo. But you, this audience, has raised $1,200 in an hour, and I just mentioned it once an hour ago, and you guys are already putting up $1,200. Incredible work. The link is up on my personal pages. I got to pop it on Instagram too, and then also on Facebook and X. So find it there. Officer Reed, the family's trying to raise $10,000. All right, it's not like they're looking to do one of these scam deals of $100,000. We're talking $10,000 here because a lot of his money was made doing off-duty work to raise his sons, and he can't do that for a while.
40 donors in the last 2 hours. So
yeah,
pretty good.
And that's a lot of that is this audience. So nice job. Now, real quick, I put this up on my Instagram stories yesterday. It was just a picture of Claire. She was working out with her golf clubs, the plastic golf clubs that kids have. Yesterday morning, getting ready for Masters Sunday. So I took a little photo of her and I put it up on my Instagram story. And behind it is the bar in our house, that has some drinks on it. And all the comments were about the bar in the background. That wasn't really the point of the Instagram. The point of the story, the point of the picture was about my daughter working on her golf game the morning of Masters Sunday. And all you guys want to do is ask what's on my bar there, John.
Yeah. No, that's the way social media works.
It's like, that wasn't the point, guys.
Internet sleuth.
I got DMs like, what do you got back there? What kind of whiskey is that?
Right.
It's like,
any Tito's back there?
There is some of that, by the way. A lot of local stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of local stuff.
There
but
you
yeah,
go.
if I'm going for the vodka, Tito's is the way to go. I mean, that stuff, whew, boy, is it smooth. But yeah, that was not really the point, guys. It wasn't. Anyway, as we roll through.
When has social media been on point?
All right, that actually ties in beautifully to this next story here.
All right.
Gen Z is less happy than previous generations, a new survey reveals. People from ages 12 to 26, that's Gen Z, say they are having a harder time than previous generations did at their age, per a new research by Gallup. Now, this is a classic example of not teaching people what prior generations had been through and gone through. To sit there as an 18-year-old and say that you are having a harder time than prior generations. There were kids or young men who were fighting in World War II, who were going off to Vietnam to get slaughtered at your age. And you get upset because you don't get enough traction on your latest Snapchat. I know that every generation does this to some degree. But I do feel like it's worse than ever before for two reasons: social media and lack of historical context. If you don't know what your prior generations went through and suffered through, and you also spend your life in a bubble on your smartphone, you are destined to feel like you are not doing well enough, like everybody else is doing better, and you're generally less happy than prior generations. Because there's no historical context of anything. And on top of that, all you see is fake social media posts on how well everyone else is doing. And it's not real life, to John's prior point. Social media is not real life. So the 2000 Gen Z kids surveyed in this recent poll by Gallup, 75% reported being at least somewhat happy. You might think that's good, and it is, generally speaking. However, what happens here is that percentage drops significantly as people in the age group reach adulthood, ages 18 to 26. So like they're happy from 12 to 18 or 12 to 17, generally speaking, and then their happiness falls off a cliff as they get into the quote-unquote real world. They go to college, they start working jobs, and they're like, wow, this is not all it's hyped up to be. But in large part, it's because they're not appreciating the grind. You know, we can all look back, and I know many of you do, and I do. And I say this as someone who's, younger than many of you probably right now. As I sit here with three young kids, mid-30s, looking back on the last 15 years, and I say, gosh, some of those terrible moments I had from 18 to 25, whether it was work-wise, personally, professionally, you look back on those being character-defining moments that make you better, right? That get you to where you are today. And they're tough in the moment. Nothing necessarily that was earth-shattering, but they're tough in the moment. I'll never forget a program director in New York telling me that I did the worst radio show he's ever heard in his life. Now, some of you might agree with that and say, yeah, that's every day here on KCMO. The worst damn show I've ever heard. But I remember thinking that my career was over. Guy was a legendary, probably the biggest program director in New York City. His name was Mark Chernoff. Told me I did the worst radio show in the history of WFAN, which is the biggest sports radio station in America. And I was like, well, I'm done here. Time to go sell insurance. Not knocking insurance sales, but you get the point. Time to go do something else in my life.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah. Yet, here we are. That was almost 10 years ago now. And he and I are friendly, keep in touch, and he admitted he was wrong. And that's pretty rare. So you think about those moments that you have in your early careers, and it's good. It's healthy to have them. And when you're going through them, you realize you're going to come out the other side. And my fear is that Gen Z, less so than millennials, less so than Gen X, and less so than boomers, don't understand how those can be positive character-building moments, and they're getting caught up in their own social media bubbles. And it's not healthy for them. You got to just live and let live. News coming up in a minute, 913-408-7957. We'll get to more with you coming up next on KCMO. You know, John brought up a good point to me, and that is just facing adversity. And it does seem, as I share this new poll with you done by Gallup, that shows Gen Z is less happy than previous generations. I think to myself, how much of that is our fault? Now, you know, my kids are young, 5, 3, and 6 weeks yesterday. So congratulations to Charlotte. She's made it through 6 weeks with 2 crazy older sisters who love her, but they can get awfully loud sometimes. I can't tell you where they got that from. But anyway, that notion of like not wanting your kid to fail. And then when they have a slight misstep at 18, 19, 20, 21, it's like the world's ending. The world's falling apart. And I thought about this over the weekend because Claire had her first soccer games on Saturday and Sunday. And we were leaving practice last Wednesday. And, you know, she said to me, and I always joke about how, you know, we're Mets fans, grew up a Mets fan, still love that team to this day. And, you know, I always say to her how they stink, and I never seen them win in my life and the whole deal. And she said to me as we're leaving practice last week, this is pretty good insight for a 5-year-old. She said, Dad, what if we lose our soccer game like the Mets always do? And I said to her, well, losing's good. Losing builds character. You know, if you lose, it makes you appreciate the wins. So Saturday for their first game, you know, this is a bunch of 5-year-olds. They're playing 3-on-3. It was like herding cats, but I was actually pretty impressed. Okay. I really was impressed for 5-year-olds who have been playing together for like 2.5 weeks.
I wondered if it was that herding and cloud of dust soccer.
Less so because they do 3-on-3.
Yeah, that's cool.
With no goalie.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually was pretty good to watch. And they won the game. You know, they don't keep score at that age, but they won the game like 7-1. So the girls knew they won, right? Like they understood that they were the better team and they won. And they're like, oh, yeah, look at us. Woo, we won. And the coaches are like, hey, come on. We're not keeping score. It's all about just teamwork, blah, blah, blah. So yesterday they had a game as well. And I stayed home with the younger two. You know, it was hot out, middle of the day, and the Masters were on. So anyway, I was taking one for the team, and I decided to stay home with the younger two. It's just, it was for the best. I go to every practice, but it was for the best, I stay home. So I find out when they get home that they just got smoked. I mean, it was like 10-1. I mean, they just got crushed.
Shoe went on the other foot, huh?
Yeah. And, you know, we had a great conversation. Losing's not bad necessarily. Makes you appreciate winning, makes you get better. And she said to me at 5 years old, hey, what if we play them again? And I'm like, well, you will. But that's the beauty of sports. You can get better. The teamwork. You work on improving yourself every practice. So I think losing is great. It's outstanding life lessons that we can teach kids of all age groups. But I feel like so many parents, they don't want their kids to lose. They protect their kids from losses. And I'm like, no, losing's what's going to make them successful adults one day, John.
Non-positive moments in life are learning lessons. Right?
Yeah.
This is your chance. What do I say? Well, you say winning's not everything.
Yep.
You played well.
Yeah.
Keep trying.
Yep. Get better.
That kind of thing.
Improve. That's how I think about life today in many respects. No,
today's life lessons come in a little book about a teddy bear with a different, you know, no.
What are the pronouns for the teddy bear?
Stop bubble wrapping your kid. They fall down, skin their knee. Hey, get up. You're okay.
Yeah.
You know, let me look at it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You know, you're all right.
Exactly.
You know, that's when you do it. You don't get them a book and a story later. Am I right?
No, you're right. Mark, what have you said to your girls as they've been athletes now for the last few years? Are you good with this, or are you going to say, no, winning at all costs?
No, yeah. I don't. I mean, I like to see wins, but it's about the teamwork. It's about making friends. I mean, most of these girls aren't going to be D1 athletes, most likely. But
the vast majority will never be a D1 athlete. That's how it goes.
Yeah, and not so much about sports. I was saying non-positive moments. There are things when you tell your kid you can't have something in the store. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to have a fit. And so the 911 nanny people all acquiesce and immediately, no. You teach the kid or say, hey, you get an allowance. Give them an allowance and let them earn the amount of money to purchase what they want. And have them know that, gee, you're just next allowance. You need to work one more week to get to this amount. That kind of thing. These are the non-positive moments that are learning lessons in and of the moment.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
I saw something this weekend that I've never seen before, the game before us.
Uh-oh.
Parents, you need to settle down out there.
Uh-oh. What'd you say?
Saw a mom get kicked out of the game, stood up, yelled, cussed at the ref for making the wrong call.
Oh, wow. Are you serious?
And then the next play, when the ref made a call for their team, a couple dads stood up and did the, joking clap, and they got thrown out. So the ref was a little bit antsy at that point.
Well, yeah, he was doing his best Bob Higgins.
Three guys kicked out. One lady kicked out. I'm like, come on, it's
kids.
Get them out of here. It's kids, come on.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, but also, the ref may have been a little trigger happy, shall we say?
Yeah.
Right? But parents, come on.
Settle down.
Settle down. Okay? You know, this isn't Messi at Arrowhead on Saturday night, which, by the way, I got stuck in that traffic coming from the Jackson County Lincoln Days event in Blue Springs. You know, I hop on 70 westbound. I figure I'll just take it right to 435. And I'm getting the stadiums, and I'm like, all right, the K's blacked out, obviously. Royals were not in town. Like, why are all the lights on at Arrowhead? And then I'm like, why is there traffic on 435? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, Messi was here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. And pushed me back another 10 minutes. Mike's in Olathe. What's up, Mike?
Hey, I was just sitting here actually planning for my next class and looking at those simple rules I have on the board for my classrooms. One of my rules is be wrong. There's 5 or 6 other kids that are thinking the same thing, and if you don't pipe up, then they're not going to get the answer. You're not going to get the answer. I encourage being wrong. If really quick, I'll list these. Be kind. Don't be mean. Respect others. Do the work. Be wrong. Help others. No profanity. And the last one is think. These kids are afraid to speak out and be wrong. If you rip somebody for saying something that's wrong, I'm all over you. You're going to lose, conduct points and stuff. Respecting others and being okay with being wrong, because it's the only way to succeed. I mean, think of Edison and all these great inventors. It's logical, but you're right. There's a fear and this sort of I don't know what it is, inhibition that keeps people from just being wrong and saying the wrong thing. But I encourage it because we all learn, and sometimes I'm wrong, and call me out on it. That's just humility, and that's the best way to learn.
Well said there, Mike. Nice job. Bravo. Keep those kids in line. We need more people like Mike in the classroom. That's what we need.